This is what I wrote Dragon Link support about. I've set this receiver up kind of the way I think it will be set up. I put S-Bus on channel 1. I don't know about this. I've never used RSI before, so that may stay there, that may not. But this is the major reason I did ask tech support some questions. You see right down here where the telemetry goes in to the telemetry goes into the receiver from the flight controller. We have serial in, serial out, clear to send, and request to send. Now let's look real quick at what happens when we update this to the current version of the firmware. And after upgrading it to the beta firmware and coming into the beta GUI, this is what we see. Serial in, serial out. The next pin down is no longer clear to send, it's request to send, and the next one down is not used. I'm not going to get deep into this because Dragon Link wouldn't really address my question the way I ask it. I got more of a salesperson reply, but I did get a reply that was satisfactory to me. Perhaps they're not using both these signals anymore, and that's what gives them a little more range, a little less data going back and forth, and therefore they have enough time and it gives them a little more range. I have no idea. I give up. And this shows it's ppm on channel 7. I put it S-Bus on channel 1, as you saw. I'm not going to click save in here or anything. I'm going to test this as it is and follow kind of what they gave me. I went back and forth twice with them. I asked my question. I got an answer that was so-so. I tried to go in for, are there any documentation or notes about what this firmware does? And I basically got back a salesman's reply. So that's all I can do. I will just assume that S-Bus is actually on channel 1 right now. I don't know about this stuff. I won't be hooked to those channels, so it doesn't matter. But this is what bothered me and why I did put in that request to support. But again, let me test this real quick. I had to come back into this beta GUI and set the S-Bus to this channel by clicking on factory. I left the rest of this alone. I also made channel 8 just a channel. I'll only be using these 3 pins that are channel 1 on the receiver, so the rest of this I don't care about right now. So I made that change. S-Bus here, channel 8 here, clicked save. Then on the receiver, I had to, of course, update its firmware to the beta firmware, or the two will not talk. So I also found on the transmitter, did I say receiver? I also had to update the transmitter to the current beta firmware. So I had to come back in here and change this to S-Bus instead of ppm. It was set to ppm when the update took place. I also just set these all to 0 so that you've basically got auto power selected, and then I clicked save. I then connected the receiver to the 765 wing on the bench, connected the well, let me just show you that real quick. So I came back into Windows 10 Wi-Fi, connected to the Dragon Link. I found the Wi-Fi drops. The beta firmware may help with the dropped Wi-Fi connection. I don't know. Technical support didn't really answer my questions. Again, again, they kind of gave me a salesman's answer. Oh, it's just the cutting edge. Maybe I'll show you those emails here in a second. I asked for documentation, got none. There we are, connected, and of course I come out here and ping that address 192.168.1.1 to verify I am connected. You must be disconnected from any other wireless. You must be connected from any other Wi-Fi. You must be disconnected from any Bluetooth. You must be connected from any Ethernet that may be grabbing that address on you. May have been some of the problems with Crossfire. So you can see I am connected. I'll let these parameters read in. And then we'll go over into setup and show you that I do have radio communications with it. Throttle up. There we go. Roll. Yaw. And pitch. Plus my switches all work, as you can see, the switches work. So basically, in a nutshell, we do run the beta firmware. You can't just get it running in the 2020 firmware and GUI and then simply put the beta over the top of it. You're going to have to go back in and change some of the values back to what you were. The default beta firmware causes some problems there. Let me go get those emails real quick. Here's the first email I sent and the reply I got. And I'm not trying to beat on these people. Technical sport's tough. I did it for 50 years. And you can get beat down, start giving poor answers. I wrote, I have my Dragon Link. I have had my Dragon Link for a week now, and I think I've done pretty well getting the Mavlink over Wi-Fi working with Ardu Pilot Mission Planner. I am most interested in Mavlink telemetry. I have it all working under the stable production firmware from November 2020. When I flash the beta software, I seem to get myself into trouble. That was if I moved parameters around, but I didn't tell him that. As I am most interested in telemetry, what is the advantage of the beta firmware? I just copied the full name of each firmware out. And are there, I should have said any, I'm not sure if that would have confused him. I put and there by mistake. It should have been any. Are there any docs for it? So I basically told him what was going on, that I was most interested in telemetry. What is the advantage of the beta software? Are there any docs? So there were two questions here, two simple questions. Is there an advantage to the beta software? And are there any documentation? I got back this. If you get telemetry working in the November 2020 software, it should work when you upgrade to the, still work when you upgrade to the beta firmware. It does after fashion. I found out now that if I don't change the S bus around and stuff, it actually doesn't. I wasn't changing any of that before today, so basically my statement down here was I have it all working under the stable. When I upgrade to the beta, it's basically still working. I didn't even say, why is the clear to send becoming a request to send, and the other line where the other clear to send or request to send disappears? I didn't want to muddy the water. I had two simple questions. What is the advantage of the beta software, and are there any docs? No changes were required when I updated to the beta. Yeah, well, there can be. If you don't leave it on the default PPM channel 7 It won't be. One thing you could try is to reverse the TX and RX wires. I'm not sure why. I wasn't having any problems with that. That is the one thing that can change. So basically, I didn't get an answer. What is the advantage of the beta firmware? Are there any docks? I basically got, well, if you put the 2020 firmware on it, then it should still be working when you put up the beta firmware. Okay, that wasn't really what I asked, but I liked that information. I did exactly as you did, set up using the standard firmware. No changes were required when I updated the beta. Well, I think I've showed you the changes I had to make. One thing you can try is to reverse the TX and RX wires. I don't need to. I don't have any problem there. That is the one thing that can change. Well, actually, the clear to send and request to send on EXP3 can change too, sir. So, because this wasn't a great answer for me, I reformulated a question. So this is how I replied to that question, trying to get the actual answers that I was after. So does the beta firmware give me any additional stability, range, or such as that with telemetry? When I upgrade to beta, everything works as it did before. Well, it does work. I wasn't testing the RC link. It doesn't work unless you make changes in the beta GUI. But that's neither here nor there. That's not really, I wasn't asking about control link. I'm more interested in telemetry and the beta firmware. I have not had to change anything. I didn't until today when I wanted to do S-Bus and change it to channel 1. That's to be understood. So, is the features / bug fixes of the beta documented anywhere? And this is what I got back. The beta firmware is a huge improvement in rejection to interference and increases range and telemetry performance. The beta firmware has been used for over 6 months now and is working perfectly. There are no bugs and it is safe to fly. The only thing we have left to do is add a few features and make the GUI nice and pretty. If it is working for you, I suggest using the beta. I use it in all my flying. Gee. So does the beta firmware give me any additional stability, range, or such as that in telemetry? Well, this salesman's statement right here sort of addresses that. So I'll take that as a yes. And then the rest of this is just fluff. And is the features, bug fixes, maybe I should have said are the features, bug fixes of the beta documented anywhere? I don't get an answer to that at all. So you can see I'm kind of frustrated by my replies from support. This one line right here, the beta firmware has a huge improvement in rejection to interference, increases range and telemetry performance. That's enough to make me use it, so that makes the question to support worth it. But I really wished my questions were answered directly for each one of them. Could be one person there doing the whole support. I don't know how much support's going on for this, how frustrated they are with 1,000 questions a night, how much they're just giving back canned responses. I didn't feel all warm and fuzzy from either one of these responses. I don't think anybody would. Now, I'm asking for deeper information than most people would. Most people would take this out of the box if they're not interested in telemetry and they can fly PPM. They're just going to fly it as it comes out of the box. They're probably never going to upgrade it to the beta firmware. They don't care. And it's probably going to work for them perfectly. And so I'd say 9 out of 10 of their customers are going to take this stuff out of the box and fly it with no questions for support. And having been in the hot seat on answering questions for 50 years in electronics and computers, I can completely understand their frustration. But I don't think I'm dealing with a person from another country, it would seem that if this is made in the United States and supported in the United States, are the features, bug fixes of the beta documented anywhere? They should be by somebody. So in conclusion, yes, the beta firmware needs to be installed if you're interested in telemetry. The beta firmware installation on the transmitter and receivers can change some of the values. You can go back into the beta GUI and change your channels for the S-bus, etc. You have to change it in the transmitter too. I would try to make as few changes in there as possible and don't change anything on the EXP3. And they say don't change anything in the RF. There's a lot of other parameters that are in the 2020 GUI. I think those will come back when they upgrade the GUI. And I'll apologize for my frustration. A lot of my frustration is coming from the fact that this wasn't exactly the kind of support that I would do. And sometimes I get a little irritated with support people because I think they're embarrassing me and my 50 years of support. I tried to make sure anytime anybody asked me a question, I wrote the question, copied it, pasted it into the document, and pasted my answer to that specific question underneath it. And I do understand people getting in the weeds and just giving out canned answers, but I don't have to like it. But I do hope this, and I might not be doing any better of a job than these other people. I don't profess to be perfect. I'm still stating things wrong because of my brain concussion from several months back. I still see it happening. I am still getting better each day. But I think, and I'm trying hard to give you information that skirts around all those issues, clarifies some of those issues. I don't really say, do as I say and you'll be fine. I'm just relating my experience. And sorry for places where the documentation stinks and the support isn't great, isn't terrible. It's just par for the course in drones. Nobody seems to stand out with exemplary support anymore. I don't know why. So, sorry about relating some of my frustrations. I do hope this helps you not to have some of those frustrations and get up and going with this. I'm just trying the best I can. And I think others are too. But there's compounded frustrations going on with this. I'm getting ready to do another video where you're going to see even more problems with the documentation. And you would think from 2018 to almost 2022, you'd think in almost 4 years the documentation would have been straightened out. That's just my personal opinion. I still recommend this hardware. And I thank you for listening to my gripe session. Thank you.